She's right. Well, I want you to know that Duke and I, every year, there's a Northside Children's Christmas party, and he and I sang Christmas carols every year to all the Northside children. So this is the Jew who loves Christmas, and I know all the Christmas carols.
I don't know. I don't know if we could allow that. This is a reserve for the non-Jews. I think Amy knows more Christmas carols than I do, Deb.
That's funny.
Is your family all recovered?
Yes, thank you very much. They are. Thank God.
I think I'm sending my people home again next week.
Yeah, it's pretty scary out there, this Omicron.
Canceled the Christmas party today.
Oh.
Look at Jeff Nover. He's got something on his neck. What is that?
I know. I think they're called ties.
I haven't seen one. I read about them.
First one I've worn in years, but it's my Santa Claus tie.
Aww.
We have today.
Jen, how are we doing with the attendance? Is everybody on? 8:30.
I'd give it another minute if we
I haven't
can.
seen Rob. I had a conference call with him this morning, but I haven't. He's not on today, right? He's not on this, right?
He's there. It's right there.
Here.
I can't see him on my screen. My Brady Bunch screen is limited. Can't say how I screen them.
Do gallery view. You can see everybody.
I know. This isn't my call, but thank you so much for your input.
Deb, he didn't want you to solve the problem. He just wants to complain about it. So let him have his complaining time.
Best thing.
Jen, I know Tom Melcher, I talked to him a little while ago. He said he was going to be on, so he might be on another call now, but I expect he'll be here.
Thank you.
Tommy always struggles to get here. He almost always has a conflict.
He's a busy man.
Do not interpret his failure to attend as lack of interest. He always calls and follows up to make sure he's on top of things.
There's a zillion negotiations going on right now.
Right. He made that clear. Still want to keep him on. Good, Jen?
Yep, let's
Good
go.
quorum?
We are good.
We have a quorum?
We do.
Do you need to take attendance? Or should we just have everybody who's not here raise their hand?
That's it. We'll do that.
Do you know who all's on? You're good, right?
I do. I got it.
We'll
Thank
call
you.
the meeting to order then. Quarterly meeting of the WIB. This is exciting. We don't have a whole lot of things that we have to get done today, I don't think, other than hear an update from Rob and what he's been doing over the last 4 months. Before we start the meeting, I did want to acknowledge that Frances Cooper is leaving the board. She's been on the board for an awful long time. I don't know how many years. Jen, how many years has it been?
I think it's close to 10.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of you had a chance to work with Mary Frances over the years in various projects around the library, the county. She's been just a great contributor to a lot of causes that are sort of under the radar. Nobody knows much about what all she's gotten done, but she's a terrific lady. She's been a great board member, largely responsible for a number of things, including the very instrumental in the Learn to Earn initiative. So we owe her a great of thanks. I don't know if she's on today, or is she, Jen? No?
I'm here.
Would you like to say some parting words, Miss Mary?
I just want to thank everyone on the board for the good work that you do, and for the efforts of our working together. I'm just really actually thrilled that Careerlink is now coming back into the libraries around the city. And we're getting that whole thing started up again, Omicron cooperating, but I've really enjoyed the time, and I'm really sad actually the last couple of years we haven't met in person, because one of my greatest pleasures was being able to come to meetings and see everyone. So best of luck always.
This is Nancy Washington. I want to say, too, that Mary Frances, I thank you so much for being on the task force for Partner4Work and the Pittsburgh Black elected officials. You were the first one to join the task force, and you participated so fully in the work that we were able to do for the short time we were able to do it. So thank you very much. We'll really miss you.
I just want to add that Mary Frances has been a wonderful leader, not only in workforce development, but in everything she has touched in the city. And we really appreciate all of your efforts, Mary Frances, and you will be missed. So thank you for everything.
My screen froze, gang, so I'm on my phone now. All right, Mary Frances, thanks again. So we have a consent agenda. Is there anybody who has any issues regarding the items on there that we need to pull off and have any further discussion? If not, do we need to approve anything? We need to approve the consent agendas, any action items. We have to approve the meeting dates and approve the bylaw revisions, right, Jen? Hello?
We will do that under the governance conversation.
Okay, fine. So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda then, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks very much, guys. Okay, that'll stand. All right, Kristen, you want to do the audit and finance for us, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. I'm going to share my.
Chris, I'm sorry. Pardon me, please. Can we go to the governance section first, just in case folks have to get off? We need a
Good point.
2/3 quorum.
Okay, can we do one motion or we have to do two?
We have to do two, please.
Okay, so first is to approve the meeting dates. Can I have a motion?
Oh, can we turn it over to Debbie really quickly, please?
Okay, go ahead, Deb.
I'm sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I'll just jump right into, well, I won't. Before I get into governance, I just want to take a minute to introduce our new board members. And first, I want to ask everyone to join me in welcoming Gabby Gonzalez. Gabby, if you want to raise your hand. She's program officer from the R.K. Mellon Foundation. So in addition to her great work on the CEO search, or Partner4Work CEO search committee, Gabby's agreed to lend her research and policy expertise to the board. Gabby's a real thought leader, has been a great thought leader in this space and continues to do so. So Gabby officially joined the board October 1. Welcome. And then I'd like to also to have everyone join me in welcoming Tim Holt from the UPMC Health Plan. Tim brings his great expertise in HR and his passion for workforce development. This is Tim's first board meeting, and he and Jen and I have had a couple great conversations, so I'm really looking forward to having him here representing UPMC. So welcome, Tim. Raise your hand. Everybody can see you there. And then finally, please join me in welcoming two new additions whose appointments were finalized early this week, which is great. Clarence Dozier, who's Managing Director of Litigation of FedEx. Clarence, I know we said hi for a minute earlier, but raise your hand. And again, Clarence, I had a great opportunity to speak with Clarence, and I think, again, he brings a lot of expertise and passion and interest in workforce. So we're really, really excited to have FedEx on board. And Catherine McKelvey, who's the U.S. head of HR at Covestra. And there's Catherine again. We had another great conversation. And, between Dave Malone and Nancy Washington, they're bringing wonderful additions to our board. And Catherine, we appreciate what you'll be bringing to the board as well. So thank you and welcome all. So sorry, before I get to the bylaws, Jen just wanted me, for a matter of record, just to discuss our 2020 meeting dates in your board book. For several proposed meeting dates for the executive committee and the full board meeting. And as always, we're going to continue to meet quarterly at 8:30 a.m. on Fridays and will continue to offer a virtual option regardless of if or when we ever get to meet in person. So if there are any questions about the proposed meeting dates, and I'll wait a second, I'll hold my breath, wait a second, or take a breath, I should say. And if not, may I ask Mr. Chair for a motion to approve those meeting dates?
We'll move that. I will add that I voted that we have our winter meeting at Naples, but Deb voted that down. So I just wanted everybody to know.
Oh my, I wish. Wouldn't that be nice?
All right, so we have a motion for the meeting dates. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any changes? Thank you. That'll stand. And also a motion to approve the bylaws, please.
Well, not yet. We're not there. We're
Oops.
just going to
All
do
right.
that right now. I haven't done the bylaws yet.
All
So,
I
so
think
we
Dave
are,
wants to get through this step.
Yeah,
yeah. So,
I'm sure Jeff read the bylaws in depth for us.
yeah. So as we're moving on to the bylaws, I want everybody to note that we've officially separated HR from the HR portion of the Finance Committee from the Finance Committee, and we've reestablished an ad hoc Human Resources Committee to be chaired by Dave Copeland. Thank you very much, Dave. We expect this committee to meet in the first quarter of 2022 and are actively recruiting members. So if you have interest in serving on this committee, please let Jen, Dave, or me know. And you don't, I mean, it'd be nice to have some folks with expertise in HR, but it also is nice to have some folks who have other expertise. So please let us know. Secondly, as we discussed at our last board meeting, a very short board self-assessment survey will be distributed this month, which was reviewed and approved by the governance committee. So we really hope you'll take a minute to complete it and let us know what's been going on well from your point of view and what opportunity areas you see. Any questions about any of that? So
I did want to add on the survey portion, we did intentionally keep this brief. Deb and I talked about it. Our sense is that the board's working well together. If we see any indication that there's some concerns from any of the board members that we ought to be doing things any different or we're missing things, then we would go into a more in-depth survey. So if we just do the short version, that's in recognition of the time you guys put in for all your volunteer work. So we didn't want to make it too burdensome.
great. Good comment, Dave. And I see that Kat McLaughlin, thanks very much, wants to join the HR sub ad hoc committee, Dave Copeland. For you to note, thanks, Kat. So finally, as you know, the governance committee has been conducting a thorough review and revision of the Partner4Work bylaws, which I think is a very important function for us. Our bylaws have not been updated since 2017. So we did do a thorough review. And since we last met, we received a monitoring report from Oversight Services that also illuminated some deficiencies in our bylaws, particularly around the state system of record and the Sunshine Act. So all the proposed changes are highlighted in your board book and also online. These changes include the required additions resulting from our monitoring report, as well as changes to term limits, to attendance, to defining the standing committees, and a few other small changes. The changes are numerous, and we reviewed them in great detail, line by line, at the governance committee. Legal is also reviewed, and Jennifer Nestor from Oversight Services, thank you, Jennifer, who provided additions and some deletions and other comments. So we're most grateful for her review as well. So I'm not going to go through them in detail. I hope you have. If there are any questions about the revisions, we'd appreciate any discussion. Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, again, I'll turn this over to you for a motion.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the bylaws, please?
All right. Sorry,
Second.
I actually have a question.
Okay, go
Great,
ahead.
Sam.
So some of the revisions, I guess, make more specific the process by which board members are appointed by the county executive and the mayor and set, I guess, either a 2 or 3 year term on it. But it doesn't really say how terms are renewed. So is it our expectation that members would serve for 2 or 3 years and then no longer be on the board unless their terms are renewed by the mayor or county executive, or could the board itself renew someone's term? Or could, in theory, people continue to serve under an expired term?
Yeah. Jen,
Deb,
do you want?
Deb, I'll take that. Yes. So reappointments are treated the same way as initial appointments. They have to be nominated by a certain body. They have to be, for the most part, nominated by a certain body and then appointed by the mayor and county executive. So even though it's a reappointment, it's treated the same way as the initial term. Hope that helps.
That's helpful. I'm not sure that wasn't clear to me when I read it, but.
Okay. Well, I don't know that right now. Go ahead.
I'm happy to
Jen.
add it. I'm happy to add that clarifier.
So
Yeah.
can we get an approval with Sam's suggestion that we edit that section? And if you would, Jen, share it with Sam and make sure it's accommodating his.
Thank you.
Is that
Yeah.
okay, Sam?
Yeah.
All right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks so much. So that'll stand. Okay. Is that it, Deb?
I just wanted to continue to remind everybody that we continue to seek your strong candidates from the private sector to add to, I think, this pretty high performing, engaged board. And so if you do have additional candidates to consider, please let Dave or me know, or Rob, of course, know. Thank you. I am done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for all your time on this. We appreciate
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Okay, Kristen, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody could see the dashboard report. And please let me know that you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to be reviewing the dashboard report this is as of September 30th, 2021. So this is a snapshot in time. You can see our cash balance is a little above $7 million. The lion's share is related to temporarily restricted funds. This is higher than our normal cash balance, in part because we've received draws that we typically would not see until October in September. And we also had temporarily restricted funds for the summer Learn and Earn program that we had in our cash flow that haven't been paid out yet. Moving down here, our line of credit is 0. Our accounts receivable pie chart right here is around $4.3 million. And you could see 47% of it is under 30 days, and about 46% of it is above 90 days. The above 90 days is primarily due to the City of Pittsburgh Learn and Earn $1.5 million receivable for the Learn and Earn program. We have, as of today, we've received that. So in the next quarter, you're going to see this pie chart shift, and it'll reflect more of the receivables, the bulk of the receivables being under 30 days. Under other current assets, we have about $17,000 of prepaid expenditures and insurance that we'll be expensing throughout the year. We also have $159,000 in fixed assets on our books. Under our liability section, our accounts payable is a little over $5 million, with the bulk of the payables being due to subrecipients. We also have some accrued vacation on our books and AR cleanup of around $129,000. Down here, you can see our net income is at a loss of $2.3 million. This is primarily due to the release of the Learn and Earn expenditures for the summer. The Learn and Earn program splits our fiscal years. So we recognize the revenue in the prior fiscal year, but the expenditures are released in the new current fiscal year. You're going to see this trend continue until we hit the last quarter of the year, when we start to receive in the new Learn and Earn money for the summer of 2022. Are there any questions on the balance sheet side of the dashboard report? Okay, if not, I'm going to move down to the expense section. Okay. Our total expenses for the first quarter are about $5.7 million. The WIOA cluster right here in green, purple, and blue make up about a little over 25% of our expenditures. And looking down here at the expense comparison, you can kind of see they're mostly in line. I will say the WIOA youth is about $100,000 above prior year. This is just due to providers being more timely in their submission of invoices this first quarter. And I believe also last year we were dealing with COVID, and I think expenditures were just a little bit lower than this year. TANF in the orange makes up about 23% of our expenditures. And looking down here at the comparison chart, they are about $250,000 above prior year. Earn and work ready providers have spent more money in the first quarter this year versus prior year. Again, I think providers last year were learning to work with the COVID and what made sense and what worked best for everybody. Staying down here under the expense comparison, I'm going to look at the national dislocated worker. You'll see that this year we have no expenditures there, and last year we had a little over $1 million. This grant ended March 31st of 2021, so this gap will continue to grow until we hit March of 2022. The last piece I'm going to point out is our Learn and Earn makes up 45% of our expenditures this first quarter. Moving into the next several quarters, you will see this expense decrease because Learn and Earn is seasonal. The majority of expenses happened over the summer or this first quarter of the fiscal year, which makes the piece of the pie much larger for the first quarter. But it will start to shrink as we get through the rest of the fiscal year. This summer, we served 1,553 youth, of which 1,196 participants completed the program. Are there any questions on the expense section of this report?
Kristen, it's not really a question about your expense report, but it just struck me that we have new board members and we use a lot of anagrams here. Do we have any kind of orientation program where everybody understands what these programs are? And Rob, maybe we should think about that. We don't have to talk about it today, but I'm guessing most people, the new folks don't know what these expenses are for.
That's a great point, Dave. Yeah, we could definitely pull something together that would label out.
Yeah, and we do an orientation, Dave, for our new members.
Okay.
So
Right.
we'll be going through everything with them.
All right, good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dave, and happy holidays to everybody.
There's an awful lot of moving parts to our financials, so Kristen keeps us in line. I'm thinking we've had 4 CFOs over the last 10, 15 years, and Kristen's reports are more succinct and more thorough than any of the ones I've experienced in the past. So Kristen, thanks for your efforts.
Thank you, Dave. And I will throw out to my finance committee too.
I understand.
So the board knows we totally dig down deep into these finances, and this is much more of a high level overview for everyone on the board to look at, but we definitely do dig through the.
We appreciate your efforts. All right, Susie, tell us what you've been doing of late. You better not be watching Judge Judy in the afternoon.
You got me pinned. That's exactly who I am. So I am going to put on my fake labor market economist hat and predict the future for all of you and tell you a little bit about the past. For those board members I haven't met yet, it's nice to meet all of you. I'm the Chief Program Officer with Partner4Work. So our data on what our programs have done is in the board book that you received, and I'm not going to rehash that now, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And instead, I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the labor market. And I will say that I just play an economist on TV. So if you have any questions, I will do my best to try to answer them, but there may be things that I need to go back and dig into. So we are all seeing and all hearing across the board, from employers that they cannot find talent. And we're also hearing from job seekers that they are either looking for something that doesn't exist or maybe not going back into the labor market right now. We wanted to dig into a little bit about what's happening and share that with you right now. So you'll see here on the screen that this is the labor force participation rate since the 1980s. And this is for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I will acknowledge right up front that the charts are going to jump a little bit in geography, so I'll try to call that out, but it should be listed on the screen too, whether we're looking at Pennsylvania, this nation as a whole, or Allegheny County. And so you'll see that, throughout the 80s and the 90s, up until really the Great Recession, there was an increase in labor force participation rates. And that was a result of a lot more women joining the labor market. And then after the Great Recession, we saw the labor force participation rate decrease. And then, this tiny gray shaded bar right here is the COVID recession. And we obviously saw a significant decrease in labor force participation. So just for those that maybe aren't as steeped in labor market terminology, the labor force participation rate looks at individuals who are employed or those who are unemployed, but who are looking for work out of the total population. And so while this chart is for the Commonwealth as a whole, this blue bubble on the left side of your screen is really just looking at the nation. The Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't issue these population-specific data on labor force participation rate at the state level. But you'll see that the labor force participation rate nationally was about 62%. And there are populations with significantly lower labor force participation rates, indicating that they're sitting on the sidelines and not coming back in. So as we're thinking about what we're doing for our longer term investments and taking an equity focus on our programming, what we're looking at is how do we help to create the interventions that will make it easier for individuals who are youth and young adults, those who are 55 and older, women and Black workers in particular, to get the interventions they need to get into the labor market if that's their choice. So to dig a little bit deeper into what's happening here, because the labor force participation rate is really only one side of the picture. When we're also looking, though, at what's happening with the labor market and why workers are undergoing what's been termed the Great Resignation, there are a couple of different factors that we have to really think about. And so one of them is that this is really what the COVID pandemic has done is basically throw gasoline on a long simmering spark. And so we knew for a long time that the labor force was getting older. And it's not suddenly that people age 55 and older came in off of the sidelines. It's that as the baby boom generation has moved through, then the labor force itself is getting older because there are more boomers who are in the labor market still. So you'll see that here, and this is national data, these aren't available at the state or local level right now. So this is the change in employment by age for workers. And this orange line is everyone under the age of 55. So during the Great Recession, those workers dropped out and then have steadily come back in during the past 20 or so years, and then bottomed out again during the COVID pandemic and have started to come back. What you see is that older workers, those 55 and older, have added 20 million workers over the past 10 years or 20 years. And so we knew this was coming, in a sense, that the labor force was getting older and older. But what happened during the pandemic is that it created a catalyst for individuals to take retirements early. The amount of retirement accounts that have more than $1 million in them has increased 75% since the beginning of the pandemic. The amount of businesses that have been registered have increased considerably since the beginning of the pandemic. And people have additional options for retirement now. So there were a lot of individuals who were 55 and older who dropped out of the labor market, who took retirements early, and who decided that they were not going to come back. What we have also seen, though, if you take out those who are 55 and older, is that prime working age adults, and this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics term, not my term, but prime working age adults, those who are 25 to 54, are in the midst of their strongest recovery on record. So this chart has three different things on it. This is the labor force participation rate that we've already talked about. This is the unemployment rate here, the middle blue line, and then the EPOP is the employment to population ratio. So that's those who are employed versus the general population for working age adults. And you'll see that all of those took a dip in the pandemic, but we're getting back to kind of that 0% change. So all of this is to say that the market is getting better, but it's getting better in different ways and in ways that we think indicate some structural shifts. And what we're hearing from the job seekers that we're talking to, the employers that we're working with, is that job quality issues are of top concern for employees, and they're voting with their feet effectively. So what we also see, and where we're looking at, we've talked about this issue a couple of times in the past few months. We want to understand worker agency and what's happening and how much workers have the ability to kind of take on their own destiny. So this is the rate of job openings, hires, quits, and layoffs compared with overall employment. And so what really is the important thing here is that hires are steadily increasing again from where they were at the bottom of the pandemic. So we're back up to where we had been pre-pandemic in terms of hires to employment. But what we see here in the layoffs and the quits is that layoffs are at a nearly, and these are Pennsylvania numbers. So layoffs are at nearly a historic low. There's been one time since the beginning of these data in the year 2000 that that layoffs were lower than they are right now. And it was by 1/10 of a percentage point. And quits are at an all-time high. Now, these data go through October of 2021, and September set a record for quits in Pennsylvania. August set a record for quits in Pennsylvania. So in October, they came down slightly, but they are still higher than they've been really at any other point in the labor market. So what we're seeing is that workers are able to leave or are leaving because they either can find jobs that more readily meet what they need within their families and what they have in terms of flexibility and wages and those sorts of things, or because their current work situation is untenable and there are some additional safety and supports that are in place right now. So agency has increased, and we've seen that affecting both workers and affecting businesses. We have a number of different programs right now that are working on job quality with businesses, from the Aspen Institute work to the National Funds for Workforce Solution work. And the employers who are at the table there are readily talking about what they can do to do a better job of job quality because they need to in this moment. And we're hopeful that by laying this groundwork now and creating policies that better meet the needs of single parents who are working, of populations working in retail and hospitality, that those practices will continue once the labor market switches, if it switches back to a labor market that's more friendly to employers.
Susie?
Yes.
This is Gabby. I had the same question that Scott had in the chat. What's the left axis, the y-axis? Is that percentage?
Thank you. And I should have warned you in advance that I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So my apologies. Thanks for calling that out.
Okay.
So the left axis is the rates. So this is the percentage of hires or quits to overall employment. So it's that rate. So right here, we're looking at quits being about 2% of overall employment.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Susie, I don't know if you can slice and dice this data, but if you were to exit healthcare and food service, say, could you do these charts over again?
We can do them at the national level, but not at the state level. And what we see at the national level is that quits are being driven by leisure, hospitality, and retail. So the quits rates for leisure, hospitality, and retail are about 5.7% nationally, if I recall correctly, and compared with the 2% overall in the labor market. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The narrative in the public is that white collar jobs or white collar workers are burning out and are leaving their jobs en masse. That's not necessarily supported by the data. Professional and scientific services do have a higher quit rate than average, but really it's leisure and hospitality that's driving this.
Not healthcare.
Not healthcare in the same way. I can pull those data though.
Duke's spending his day, I'm sure Tim is too, trying to figure out what to do about that.
Yeah, we're obviously dealing with a significant shortage in the clinical staff, the nursing staff, the technical staff. We're paying super premium dollars just to attract and cover space, and we're still not able to find enough people. this is going to be probably a challenge for the next at least year or two for us in the health space.
Susie, the leisure and food, I'm sorry, go ahead, Duke.
Let's just to say that that national data doesn't necessarily, I mean, it tracks occupation, right? It doesn't necessarily track whether nurses are going to work in hospitals or in some other, area of the healthcare field. So I think part of what's happening is people in healthcare, right, have been like leaving dangerous clinical settings and going to work in safer areas. And what the data is showing us on leisure and hospitality is that workers are leaving the lowest paid and, like still frontline jobs that exist in our economy. So that's kind of underscores Susie's point there.
Yeah.
Susie, I have two questions. One, so we've known this was coming for a long time. Birth rates were at their highest point in 1992, and they've gone down ever since. It's my understanding. And colleges started seeing this, 8 or 10 years ago, but now the perfect storm hit with the pandemic. With that trend, consumers retiring at an accelerated rate due to the stock market or whatever. And so what we're left with is a continuing trend of fewer people in the workforce, and that's only going to continue to decline based on there are just fewer people under the age of 25 at this point. So do we have total data on how many open jobs are there right now versus how many open people, how many people that are, potential workers that are on the sidelines? Are we looking at like, 1 million jobs for 800,000 people, or how far apart are those numbers? And then the second question is having to do with what we were saying in terms of the occupations and the shortages in each. If leisure and hospitality, if those are leading this in terms of having the largest shortages, what do we see coming? And this might not be a question for this discussion, but in terms of where does that mean? How will that industry be disintermediated then in order to account for kind of an unsolvable problem at this point? It's going to have to be automated, or it will shrink, or some other dynamics will pick up eventually when we continue to have shortages like this.
Or those employers will raise wages, improve benefits and working conditions, and attract more workers, right? I mean, like, I don't think you can have this conversation without acknowledging that the hospitality industry and most of the service industry doesn't give people predictability in their schedule, doesn't provide full-time work, don't provide benefits, and don't provide living wages. And so, when people are then faced with like also having to be frontline workers interacting with the public, of course they're going to leave those industries, right? I mean, I don't know why this like, we've been having a job quality wage crisis in this country for 40 years, and the pandemic has, like many things, brought that to the fore and made it even more apparent.
Tim, I think it's even accentuated. I think you're right to some degree, but I'm told by food service people that it doesn't matter what you pay now. They just don't trust the industry. It's
correct.
It won't. It's really going to be a long time before we repair this. We're going to be making our own hamburgers.
Is Susie done, or do you have more, Susie?
I've got a couple more slides and want to just circle back to Linda, your first question. Those data are available. If I try to quote them to you right now, it will be a lie. So I will, I've made a note of it, and we'll make sure that I get back to you on that. But I just don't want to throw out a number and have it be wildly incorrect at this point in time in terms of job openings to available workers. So just a few other slides here as we dig into also, thinking about, to this question of how do we make sure that employers are able to find the talent that we need. Part of that is job quality, and part of that is we need to make investments into populations that are facing systemic barriers to employment, and we need to understand what those systemic barriers are and how we as a workforce development board can help mitigate those barriers. And so part of that we're looking at is now kind of flipping this to what's going on within the unemployment numbers and what are we seeing in terms of who's recovering and how they're recovering. So when we look at this layoffs number here, that is very similar to, or those people who are in that layoffs number would then be able and eligible to file for unemployment. And so someone who's quit their job voluntarily cannot get unemployment benefits. So these numbers here on your screen, those are individuals who have filed for unemployment since the quarter preceding the pandemic in Allegheny County. So the bottom blue line is the initial unemployment claims, so that first claim, and someone could be counted in that number on more than one occasion, right? They might have lost their job in the fourth quarter of 2019. They might then have started working again and then lost a different job in the first quarter of 2021. So these are not unique individuals necessarily. In the orange line, those are definitely not unique individuals. That is continued claims. So that's every single week, each claim that continued beyond that first week of claims. And so ostensibly, you could have one person counted 12 times in a quarter if there are 12 weeks in that quarter. So, but what we see here is that the labor market is improving for job seekers in terms of layoffs. And it's another way of kind of looking at those data. Claims were down 55%, initial claims in Allegheny County from November of this year to November of last year. So things are getting better, but they're not getting better at the same rate for the same individual or for different individuals. We also heard and had a lot of feedback that people thought that ending the federal UC benefits early might help incentivize people to come into the labor market. There have been a few studies that have demonstrated what actually happened for states that ended those benefits early. The overall employment numbers didn't change, just the makeup of the employed population changed. And so for states like Pennsylvania that kept those extended federal benefits, we saw prime working aged adults continued to sit out of the labor market during the summer until September when the unemployment benefits ended at the federal extension. And we saw younger adults being able to fill those jobs. And so that's one of the factors that led to a smaller learn and earn cohort this past summer, for instance. We heard from any number of learn and earn participants who did not participate this summer, but did participate in past summers, that they were able to go get a job on the open market that paid more and provided them with more hours than learn and earn can provide, which is a win in our book when young people are able to do that. And then when we dig further into these numbers and we disaggregate them by race, we start to see some other inequities happening here. And so if you look at this dark blue line is initial claims, the orange line is continued claims, so who keeps filing for unemployment. The gray line is regular unemployment exhaustees, so that's the kind of general standard unemployment claim program. Yellow is emergency benefits, that was the federal extension. And then the light blue line is the pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, so another UC program through the state level. And you start to see that Black workers are disproportionately represented in all of these unemployment categories, but they are particularly disproportionately represented compared with their general share of the population when you look at those continued claims. So we can't necessarily draw too many conclusions from these data, but they seem to suggest that white workers were able to get back to work more quickly during the pandemic, and Black workers were on unemployment compensation for a longer period of time. That could have been because of a number of factors, but it definitely suggests that we need to be thinking about all of these considerations as we look at our investments longer term. So when we're thinking about longer term investments and thinking about where we want to make sure that Partner4Work is kind of thinking moving down the line, and I'll come back to these data if we have time, but this is just broken out by industry and kind of reiterate some of the things we've talked about. Then we're really looking at how do we ensure that we create interventions to help those populations that have really kind of lost ground during the pandemic. So those older workers, disconnected youth, individuals who graduated from high school during the pandemic. We've seen that enrollment into post-secondary is down. But employment among that population is not necessarily up. And so we anticipate that there are a lot more youth out there who are disconnected from education and from employment. Those data aren't yet available, but we're kind of bracing ourselves for that and starting to change the way we operate our OSY programs, our out of school youth programs, to ensure that we have supports for those young people when they're able to come into the system. Workers of color and Black workers in particular, and then women are also populations who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. What we're also seeing on the demand side is that, you know, to some of the points that have already been made, when employers are able to provide flexibility of scheduling and guaranteed hours, when they are able to look at wages and think about family sustaining wages, then they are doing a better job of not only hiring workers, but maintaining them. We are seeing that employers that are investing into their HR practices and investing into making changes are having an easier time, not an easy time, but an easier time of recruiting job seekers. And one of the common refrains that we hear is that we're doing everything we used to do, but we're not getting the same return on investment when it comes to hiring employees. And so our work with employers is talking a lot about, you're using traditional methods, but you're trying to find a population that's not traditional for your business. And so we need to change up those traditional methods in order to make sure that job seekers understand the benefit of coming to work for your business. And so a lot of that is thinking about, you know, with our partners at AHN and UPMC, different training programs that we can help prepare job seekers for, to help move things into. With our restaurant partners, thinking about things like flexible but consistent scheduling, and making sure that we're thinking about childcare holistically as part of job training and employment programs. But we've also seen too, this is not a skills gap issue in the same way that, you know, we had talked about for years and years and years. The key in demand skills haven't necessarily changed. It is a human behavior issue that we are looking to address. And so we have to switch up the way that we're thinking about how we make these interventions. So I know I just threw a lot of data at you. I have a couple of follow-ups, but I'm happy to also answer any questions that anyone has on any of this.
This is really depressing. Thanks for the Christmas greeting for all of us. Appreciate it. Susie, is there any region that has done something that we should know about that we might be able to copy? It sounds like a lot of it's a communication issue to our employers. Our large employers already know all this, but as we know, most of our workforce doesn't work for large employers.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas that anything we could do?
You know, not there's no kind of low-hanging fruit here, right? This is a cacophony of challenges, and so there's not going to be one single intervention that we can make and dramatically shift the market. But I think that, to your point, this also isn't, and the point that Linda made earlier, this isn't a challenge that appeared overnight, right? The pandemic certainly accelerated things, but it's not, there's not going to be a solution overnight that changes anything. And so continuing to make sure that we are thinking about working with the K-12 system, working with our post-secondary partners, and creating a holistic system that has multiple entry points for job seekers and entry points for employers. Some employers can really engage on in-depth, you know, creating massive policy changes within their organizations, and some are just, you know, drowning in this moment and need as many workers as they can. One of the challenges is that we can't manufacture people, and we certainly can't, you know, identify people who are going to be willing to work for employers that they're not satisfied with en masse. And so this has to be a solution that has everyone at the table brainstorming on.
Any other
We do have, oh, yep.
Go ahead.
I just had a question. You know, the one thing you were talking about, manufacturing people, obviously the population size is population size, but what about the immigrant community, and what are we doing there to help make those connections and connections to employers? And I know that, you know, we have, I think, 900 Afghan refugees moving into Pittsburgh. Like, how are we connecting them into employers, into jobs? How can we help do that?
a
Carrie,
great
you might want to
question.
weigh in on this as well, the work you're doing with literacy.
Yeah, Carrie, can you jump in with your Literacy Pittsburgh and JFCS work?
Yeah, sure. Tim, Carrie, with Literacy Pittsburgh, we serve thousands of immigrant and refugee adults every year with English language learning and citizenship preparation. What we actually find is many of them come to us with previous healthcare experience and credentials in their home countries, but often face daunting, as I'm sure you're well aware, re-credentialing challenges. In addition to some language support. There are some good models even right here in Western Pennsylvania about ways that they can be supported in quickly re-credentialing. And we're super interested in working with you or others about ways that we can design programs that are providing English language support right alongside specific job training or credentialing programs. I think, we have a lot of interest in our student population in healthcare. JF&CS also does, their career development center also does a lot of job placement for this population. So they're a good partner as well.
Dave,
you've been great partners to us in trying to make those connections. It's just, I keep on thinking about how do we get more people, to your point, Susie, the population base is there, that as we get more people coming in, how do we connect them that may be non-traditional avenues? So it's good to hear we're keeping on pushing.
Yeah, and I'm sure Carrie could verify this, but some of the public housing properties have significant immigrant populations that are fairly well organized and communicate fairly well. Northview Heights is one, for instance. It may be that we should talk a little bit more to them about some interactions, Susie, at some point. I'm sorry, Ike.
well, I guess Susie, you're going to regret saying manufacturer employees, but actually, I think we do have to manufacture employees. The question for, I think, the WIB, is this a short-term thing, even if you're talking 2 years, or is this a structural problem in the workforce where we just don't have enough workers and enough people interested in working? And, what I think's happened is that we really don't have enough people working and that want to work. And so, from what I know of my time on the WIBs and all, the programs are all designed with the assumption that there's a large adult population out there that just is mismatched with jobs. And so if we train them up and, we get them onto the right path and we sort of head them, towards high need jobs, we become a facilitator of sort of synchronization. But if the problem really is that people just aren't interested or there aren't enough, then there's a different task. And, and that task has to do with, identifying specifically in our region. It's good to see all these sort of Pennsylvania and national statistics, but the WIB's responsible for a region, and I think we're responsible for understanding our region very well. So I think the first step is to really sort of get out there and talk to a bunch of different types of people, about what's going on in the region. And I've talked to Rob about this, and the problem there is the money really isn't there to do that kind of study. So we'll have to rustle it up somehow, maybe get the educational community to get some grants or do something for us. But at any rate, I think we really need to do both, going into communities and talking to people who are work eligible, but aren't working, what that's about, what they're looking for. The recruiters, I'm interested not just so much in what people that are hiring, who they're hiring, but I'm interested in who they're rejecting and why. And, and we should be talking to some of those people. We, in the schools, I think Susie's mentioned the schools, we may have to go back and look at re-enthusing kids about careers early on so that they take their education seriously, as they go through high school. And these are longer term things. So I think the WIB has to take a look at, I have no doubt that there's some immediate things we can do. Tim's talking about the immigrant population and some other things. There's clearly some workforces out there that our traditional approach of sort of synchronizing works. But I would make an appeal that we actually create some sort of a committee that looks at, the regional's workforce future, and how we, really identify, and increase the pool of eligible workers and interested workers, in addition to our normal synchronization work.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
I just want to add something that I've assessed as, my family grew up homeless. We were on welfare, Section 8, you name it. The reality is that the increases in compensation that are available through some of the services that we provide pale in comparison to the subsidies that folks would lose as a result of our work. And that's a structural issue that's been there for a very long time. And quite frankly, the only solution to that is not incremental synchronization, but material upskilling of our workforce. Every company that is indeed still hiring is simultaneously investing in technology in a way that is getting them to the point where they don't need additional humans to increase their scale and growth. Every single company that has the financial ability to do so is doing that. And so if you look out 10 or 20 years, there's going to be an even greater chasm in the number of jobs that are available, and the needs and the compensation is going also to spread. And so to that end, one of the just important stats I always keep top of mind is that if you have more than $5,000 in your bank account, you no longer are eligible for programs like Medicaid. $5,000 more would reduce $40,000 a year in healthcare. It's just not, it doesn't make sense for me to make $5,000 more dollars. And so how do we increase people's take-home salary by $30,000 or $40,000 above what they think is available to them right now? I think that's the question that we as members of this board and as the staff have to be thinking about. Otherwise, we're going to be looking back 20 years on numbers that are even more drastically disappointing than the ones that were shared today.
Hey, that's an easy one. Just promote the hell out of unions.
You say that cavalierly, but it's actually true, and Tim's project's proving it. I guess I'd say we ought not to waste a good disaster. We have a chance to really attract attention on chronic problems that our society's been dealing with, and don't forget, half of our kids don't even get out of high school. So what Jeff's doing, reaching into the high school and recruiting, is something that we need our employers to know more about and show the success. You've hired 100% of your cohorts, Jeff. How many kids are you into now?
Well, for this year, there's 82 people went through it.
Yeah.
And of those 82, I'm going to say about 70 are actually in unions and working.
And they're all.
We always have a few that drop out because once they start, they decide they don't like it. Working construction, or they unfortunately fail a drug test along the way. But the vast majority do move on and start to work.
Not trying to do a commercial for you, but $50,000 careers are better. They're going to have to go into high school and recruit, and they're going to have to do it early before kids go in the wrong direction. I know, Linda, you've done a lot of work at the conference on this, and certainly Gabby's been living her life on this for many years. I don't know if you want to add anything.
But we've been seeing that successful, and I'll use Duquesne University as an example. They've been going out into the schools and directly into the neighborhoods, and actually have hired community advocates. So they're meeting people where they are rather than saying, here are our programs, come and get them. And we're taking that same approach with the Tech Workforce Action Group, with Innovate PGH and Partner4Work and the Tech Council with these training providers, is that there's a need to really start at the neighborhood level and establish trust and examples. because we're really looking at introducing, in some cases, some new careers or new concepts that haven't yet been modeled for some of these students. And so you need to establish a level of trust and provide a level of example that's compelling. And that's what's showing early signs of success here and in other parts of the country. And I know with Neighborhood Allies and other groups, that's their approach. But Duquesne University, just in the last 2 years, they've reduced the number of ER visits and are working on reducing the number of asthmatic children in the neighborhoods that they're working in. I know, of course, Highmark, AGH, and UPMC are doing a lot of community health work too, but that seems to be where we say it's important, but then when it comes time to be knocking on doors and establishing trust, things start to fizzle out a bit. And maybe that's something we need to look at a little more closely.
And we probably should spend more time understanding the ROI on those kinds of initiatives. That it's a long, complicated discussion, but the underserved part of our community is driving almost half of our healthcare bill. So any attempt to get into the neighborhood, change lives, give them the dignity they deserve, help graduation rates, improve workforce, these all tie together and they're measurable. And maybe it's time that we start beating that drum a little louder.
David, this is Duke. You just hit the nail on the head that's the problem is we all look for, the result tomorrow when the things we're talking about are 10, 20, 30 years out.
That's right.
Each communities.
Yeah, and for our large employers, is as good as work as Jeff's doing, to hear about 80 kids after a year of work just ain't cutting it. So we were talking about a decade commitment to be able to change this, and it's hard to get that. But if we don't,
I just can't help myself but follow up on Joshua's point and Ike's response. So like in a heartbeat, we went right back to the programmatic side, which is fine. But I don't want lost the policy side. So what Joshua was talking about was policy change. And then Dave Malone made the comment not to let a good pandemic go to waste. And just as an illustrative example, in the human services realm, the community service block grant, which is money for the poorest of the poor, for instance, normally serving people up to 125% of poverty. During the pandemic, the ceiling on that has been raised to 200%. And advocates here in Allegheny County, myself included, our agency, are fighting to get that 200% to be continued. So it's in the current continuing resolution, but we hope to get it in the rework of the bill next year. So what I want to say is that when you think about the illustration that Joshua brought up, part of the issue of getting people into the workforce as well is to look at policies. And so right now we tend to then talk about the programmatic side, and we do have a public policy person on staff at Partner4Work. If he hasn't been another addition to the Great Resignation, Dylan Moore is our public policy person. And like perhaps that's another aspect that as a board we should talk about with staff, is like what could be the policies that Partner4Work advocates for change at the federal and state level that would also open the spigot, if you will, to let the water flow in terms of workers into the workforce.
Speaking of things that are largely unrewarding in the short term, changing policy is frustrating. But I will tell you.
Yeah, but Dave, you were on this board at the inception, as was I. So we're not short-term people. It's 20 some years later already.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add, Dave, that Rob is, through Darren's efforts on Mayor Gainey's transition team, and we got a call from Josh Shapiro a couple weeks ago, and we'll be writing a platform for those who are running for governor. And by the way, we'll write it for Josh, but it's available to any candidate, and it'll talk about these issues. And Gabby's volunteered, I think it was volunteered is the right word, to help Rob draft this along with the able staff we have. So you're 100% right. These are daunting tasks we're talking about, but I think now's the time when we could get enough attention to make some changes.
And if I
I have
may,
a
I just
quick-
wanted to pick
oh.
up real quick on Dave's point by adding raising the minimum wage. That's pathetic and inexcusable that Pennsylvania's minimum wage remains $7.25 an hour. And note that, you know, there are plenty of folks on this board who are not without significant influence with the leadership of the state Senate and state House, and could use that influence to drive some of these conversations in Harrisburg, even in their individual roles, when, you know, the leadership of both caucuses refuses to raise the minimum wage and continues to place harder and bigger burdens on, you know, on low-income workers and people in poverty when they're trying to get public subsidies and public assistance.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, the Allegheny Conference leadership is in agreement with you. And they supported 15 and actually talked about 20. Not that we could get from where we are to 20, but 15 is what the conference wanted to support. I'm sorry. We probably should raise your hand because I know everybody wants to talk.
This is Joshua Pollard. I'll just make one more comment, and I promise to be quiet from here.
Please.
The issue that I foresee is that even with these increases in minimum wage, or if we're able to get someone, you know, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50% increases in their wages, what they're losing still, that does not, you know, it made the comment on the healthcare sector, but we're in the housing development space, you know, and if you make $1 over 33,000, your rent goes from, you know, $200 or $300 a month to $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, I just want to double down on the comment that significant upskilling, dramatic changes in salaries, are, you know, we'll probably have to address the volume of people that we touch always as an organization, I assume. But there should be some faction of our board and the work that we do that is getting after significant increases for as large a percentage of people that we can touch. You know, you do budgets, and you know, it's like 50,000 is a great, you know, it's a great increase from what minimum wage is. But if you think about what happens to your cost structure if you go from making $24,000 or $25,000 a year or $15,000 a year to making 50, you actually have less money in the bank, and still yet no financial assets in a city like Pittsburgh today. And so I just don't want that to be lost on us, that some of the incremental and even, you know, seemingly material jumps in salaries actually are resulting in less, you know, on a personal balance sheet, less net income, and negative equity.
Yeah.
Relative to just staying where you are, in a, you know, either add a labor force, or add a minimum wage style job, and until we can address, you know, if we can begin to show success and significant upskilling, significant increases in salaries as a result. I think we have to be thinking about that as an organization, because many of the jobs that are available today will not be that are going to be at $15 and $20 and $25 an hour are strategically being sucked out of the system by technology.
Yeah. Laura, I know you were trying to speak.
Hello, this is
You're
Will.
muted, Laura. Wait, hold on, Will. Laura's talking. Her hand was up. You
Okay.
can put your hand up, Will. You have to wait.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Laura. You're muted, Laura.
Yeah, we
You're
can't hear.
not. Something wrong. Okay, go ahead, Will. Laura, figure it out. We'll come back to you.
My question, and I agree with, you know, Josh's comments on just that trade-off. You know, for someone jumping, you know, being on subsidies and jumping to a higher wage. But I wonder if the demographic that we are targeting, if they are really recording their wages, because, you know, because a lot of people are 1099 or even, you know, getting some type of cash supplement where they could be working. I don't know what those numbers are, but there's just this massive surge of freelance and 1099 workers, but they're also living on subsidies.
And a lot of that income isn't being recorded the same. So I don't know if there's any data we can research and targeting those people as well, if there's if there's a difference or if there's the same, and trying to, I don't know, like you said, Susie, it's a psychological aspect to it of helping them understand that, you know, we can get you a higher paying job, a higher paying wage, or some people just may be comfortable living in those conditions. It's definitely some type of systemic, you know, and I guess policy issue there. But I'm just curious to know what the data says around freelance and 1099 workers that we are targeting with our efforts.
Yeah, I know I can't get a plumber unless I pull out cash. Laura, do you want to try again?
Yeah, can you guys hear me this time?
Yeah, good.
All right, good. So I wanted to cycle back to Ike's comment because I think it really informs the other really good comments that have been made by Dave and Sam and Josh. This organization many, many years ago was a data organization and published really good local data. It moved over time and with the support of this board, and I think wisely, to focus more specifically on programs. And it really let go of its intensive data mining. And what I'm hearing here is that it would be really, really useful for Partner4Work to do some intensive work to understand what's happening in these various, admittedly COVID-driven things. This is a really new day, and to tease out, is it that there aren't enough bodies? Is it that there aren't enough motivated bodies? Is it that there aren't enough motivated bodies with the right skills, right? Breaking down each of those challenges, I think, is important. The national data don't do it. None of the statewide data that I've seen do it effectively. I think if we did that, we would be able to much more clearly make the case with specific examples to support the good points that Josh is making and that Dave is making and Will and Sam. But to make those points in the absence of really specific data, specific by sector, specific by people, specific by neighborhood, we have the ability to make those numbers real. And I suggest, as much as I love politicians, the more we can do that effectively, the more effective we're going to be in informing the political discussion, whatever it may be. And my personal view is we ought to be involved in that. We need to be involved in that because we are the ones who have the ability to derive the data that ought to be driving all of those discussions. And that's something I think we should prioritize.
Susie, do you need more on your plate?
I do have one more slide that I can share with folks that talks a little bit about where we want to go. And I want to kind of put a little bit of a bow on this because I'm incredibly impressed by this board, right? It is a group of individuals who is really well informed and really driven. And it's exciting to hear that we are all aligned in terms of really needing to push the envelope and move things forward. I do want to make sure that I put a very fine point on something that Tim said about finding new populations and doing outreach, and the operator at PA Careerlink has been tasked with that and with finding additional partners to pull into the Careerlink and making sure that we're doing a better job of getting Careerlink services, whether they're provided by our subrecipients or the state's staff, to be able to access a bunch of these services. So we can talk a little bit more about some of this work, at a future board meeting and give you a good sense of what the operator does and our work with schools and all of those sorts of things. But also want to take just a minute, if I can, to telegraph where we want to go and to talk a little bit about the Good Jobs Challenge in particular, because the way I see the Good Jobs Challenge, which is an EDA grant that is currently open, it is an opportunity for us to push the system along 10 years in about 2 years' time. And so it's a significant investment. It's $25 to $30 million we anticipate. And it is looking at all of these things and aligning all of these things from both the kind of policy lens of how do we create programs and that help to push people out of poverty, while at the same time collecting those data that help us inform policymakers when it comes to subsidies that are not structured to be able to help people move out of poverty. It is looking at employers and good job quality. It's right there in the title. These, are supposed to be good jobs. They're not supposed to be the jobs that don't have, the career progression and pathway. So just want to share this map really quickly so that you can see it and know that that there's more to be done here. And we have employers who are signed on to each of these verticals, industry verticals, but until they have a letter of support or we have a letter of support in hand, I don't want to put them out there publicly. So we're just more to come on that. But the Good Jobs Challenge has a system lead entity. And so we're looking at Southwestern Pennsylvania as that kind of regional footprint. And for 2 to 3 years, the goal is to take people who are, who are not working or who are underemployed and move them into career pathway occupations. So we are looking not only at the demand side, working with employers in construction, in technology, in healthcare, in financial services, in manufacturing, but we're also looking at the supply side. How do we systemically improve the services that are available through our PA Careerlinks and through those workforce development providers that maybe aren't part of the Careerlink system? How do we create a bigger tent and make sure that we're all in this together? We're working with the community colleges to make sure they're on board to be able to upskill individuals. And there's a whole side of this grant that is for supportive services to make sure, to Josh's point, that someone can afford to go to training while they are still getting childcare for their young children, or while they are making sure that they can take that time out of the workplace to have that kind of big leap forward. We're looking right now at what have we done, seeded through state money in PA Smart Grants and in WIOA, that we can help leverage and scale to get some early wins if the grant were awarded. But then a lot of the Good Jobs Challenge is related to, once we've got employers there at the table, how do we build a system that's sustainable to get people out of poverty and into these career pathways? And so part of that is employers buying into all of this and making sure that they have benefits and wages and training programs. Part of it is looking at things like retention, which begins before someone is even offered a job. How do we make sure that we have the right fit for the employee as they're going into the employer? And then what can the public system do to make sure that someone is able to continue to remove barriers to employment after they've started working? So more to come on all of this. It is slated to be put into the EDA in January. We are working with the Allegheny Conference, so thank you, Linda, for all of your partnership on this. And the backbone organizations that you see here on the screen have signed on to be able to pull together employers and to make sure they are at the table to really look at how do we create these linkages together. So more to come. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. In the interest of time, I think I probably need to turn things over to Rob at this point.
Yeah, but I think, Susie, this is terrific, and we should. And at the beginning of the meeting, I was rushing through the administrative matters, and Jeff made a joke, but it's true. I want more of your time on this stuff, strategic thinking, than I do on our bylaws. Not that they're not important. I just want your brain power. And Duke and I were talking yesterday, for this to change, we can't rely on those who have been in workforce development for 30 years, because we have to think different. On the other hand, we need the experience of those who have been in workforce for 30 years, because there's, a lot of things have been tried and failed, but we need to push the envelope differently now. So I don't know if you guys have the appetite for it, but I would love more of your time to only talk about strategic approaches to try to address these issues differently. Because, just from this conversation, we know there's 5 different angles we should be shooting at minimum. So we've had a meeting now for 45 minutes, and our leader has yet to speak a word, and he's our guy. So Rob, if you want to make your comments, I don't want to shut anybody off, but we need more time, I think, on this.
Dave, let me just make a real quick comment, and that is, we've been talking a lot about job quality in terms of wages and that kind of thing, but there's a whole expectation side of this thing, and what people are looking for out of jobs that isn't exactly wages.
Clear, that's very clear.
That's a comment I wanted to make.
You're right. Go ahead, Rob. You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Am I on? Okay.
Yeah.
This was a fantastic conversation, and you know, Ike, your last comment is absolutely right. You know, as a workforce board, we just sign up for different job boards just to see what folks are kind of putting out there. And at no point over the past time that I've been here at Partner4Work has anything come through that actually put the wage on it. It is talking exactly what Susie is talking about, the behavior side. People are saying work from home, more flexible, things like that, that would attract to the behavior or to the flexibility that someone is trying to get out of a job right now. So I just think this was an excellent conversation. And, you know, as much as it presents obstacles and barriers for some folks, there's definitely some opportunities with our justice involved population, our immigrant population, to help usher these folks into the workforce. But also not just the behavior of people, but the behavior of employers. I think someone mentioned kind of looking at the no pile and employers taking a different approach to, you know, does this person need a bachelor's degree? Is an associate's and some experience, you know, just as good. So looking at those things, but I think what we've all done is really articulated how multifaceted these issues are, how systemic, and you know, what are some of the short-term and long-term, you know, solutions that could be at play here. So it's just an excellent conversation, and we definitely will continue them. And you know, one of the things that also just kind of popped up in my head is some type of public benefit impact analysis in regards to wages. So lots of work, great conversation. I'm just really excited about a lot of the comments that were made. So into my report. So in addition to, you know, just taking a deeper dive into operations, programs, finances, meeting with the executive team twice a week, we've continued to advance our presence through the region and beyond. And some of the recent conferences I participated in include the Institute for Politics and Elected Officials Retreat, the Ditchley Conference with the Lumina Foundation, which was a worldwide workforce development conference. And I can tell you this, is that the problems that we are facing here in the United States are the same problems in the UK, Canada, the Philippines. This is a worldwide problem that as a result of the pandemic. And it was an interesting conference because the UK was very concerned about, you know, the flexibility in the workforce, their folks coming over and living in the United States. Canada was very upset with the United States about our, you know, US or America First policies, saying that we're violating our trade agreements. But just overall, just saying that this is a definitely a worldwide problem that we're facing right now. And there are other countries with the same issues that are trying to work through as we are here, you know, in the United States and Pittsburgh. So we're seeing those issues around the world. And so there's not just movement in Pittsburgh, there's not just movement across the US as far as people looking for flexibility. There's folks that are in Pittsburgh looking at jobs in the UK and Canada and can sit right in their home and do those jobs also. So you're gonna see this problem. It is a bigger systemic problem. So also attended the CALE conference. Early next year, I'll be attending the National Skills Conference with Susie and some other members of Partner4Work. And some recent speaking engagements I've had was the steam fitters with Deputy Secretary Jennifer Barrier, or Secretary Jennifer Barrier, the county's career technical schools, Citizen Bank panel with Bruce Van Song, the Skills Gap presentation with Citizens, the Port Authority, UPMC, and CCAC, and the PWDA panel on homelessness. So also spend time getting to know some of our closest stakeholders and better understand the region's workforce priorities, interests, much like this meeting right here. So met with Dave, Roger, Gabby, who's on the call here, incoming Mayor Ed Gainey, Kid Broadbent from the Steam Fitters, Dave Dacalenti, the Master Builders, Diamante Walker, the Penns, Sam Williamson, who's on the call also, Quentin Bullock, Ike Gitlin. Me and Ike had a great conversation a few weeks ago. Sean Luther of Innovative Pittsburgh, definitely Laura, Jeff, Stephanie Pashman, Aaron, Will Allen, and definitely Debbie and Nancy Washington also. So all have given me just some really great perspective and feedback that I take into, creating a vision, kind of moving forward. So ultimately, all of this will lead me and our executive team to kind of narrow a strategic vision and blueprint for the organization moving forward. So I expect to work with Dave over the next few months and call in a special executive committee meeting to kind of roll out that vision. So any questions on that before I kind of move on any further?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
All right. And at the last meeting, we also discussed our return to the office policy. Just like to say that, Partner4Work is 100% vaccinated. And that return to the work has been fantastic. Thanks to Jen organizing that. So we got people coming in the office, and that's been great. We did give a few exceptions and for different reasons, but for the most part, we're up and running. And with a new variant now, it's definitely going to change some things, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to kind of operate in the same way. And we're coming in 2 days a week. Folks are able to choose those 2 days. And it's definitely resulted in, what I would like to say is more creativity with folks being able to meet face to face. Definitely with some of our turnover. When we came back to work, it was some of those folks meeting each other for the first time. But our intention is to continue that flexibility for folks, and we have no reason to change that right now. So we have asked folks for proof of vaccination, and any new workers, we're asking that they be vaccinated prior to working for Partner4Work. So any questions on that?
Nobody wants to take your last 4 minutes, Rob. We all have questions.
So lastly, in other exciting news, pleased to share that Partner4Work has signed a lease for a new space for the Careerlink downtown office. So under the 124-month lease with iPen Ventures, we will relocate the Careerlink to 914 through 922 Penn Ave, Suite 600. So our existing lease at Wood Street property, which has 12,000 square feet, rentable square feet, currently requires a monthly rent of $21,000. Our new lease will be 15,000 feet at 26,000, just over $26,000 a month for the same square foot price that we were paying at Wood Street. So we're in the process of hiring a project manager to make that move. We'll make that move on May 1st. Brian Kreit is on here. I want to thank him for helping facilitate this move, and he was very integral in this, as well as Andy Smith. And Brian, I don't know if you had a few words to say about this, but we really appreciate all of your hard work on this and wanted to acknowledge you for that work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate the recognition and the opportunity to speak. Yeah, I'm really excited for the move. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for the Careerlink. The new location looks like it's going to be accommodating beyond what the Careerlink has right now, and it's going to be a great spot for them. It's a great move for both parties all around.
Yeah, this will be a great space. It'll be a brand new build out, a lot of integrity for folks that are coming in to receive workforce services. So we're really happy about what we can present to people who are coming in and seeking services in Careerlink. So Really excited, and we'll continue to update you. I think we have some renderings that'll be coming out really soon that it can kind of give you an example of what the space will look like. So, and unless you have any questions on the space, that concludes my report out.
Any questions for Rob? I know we have to open up for public comment, and we open up for other business if there is any, but I did want to just ask if you could let us know. I feel like we need a special session that's going to talk more about vision and philosophy, and then help implement some plans. I'd like to know from you if you do it offline, if Saturday or something like that would work, or something more extended than this, so we're not squeezing it in 45 minutes. And I completely know that's an unfair request. So, but I do feel like while this is a global problem, Pittsburgh is so small that, if we really put our shoulder behind something, we could, get to all the decision makers pretty easily and really have an impact that might create a model that we could share with others. So I don't know where you guys are or who thinks about it, but if maybe, Jen, could you be the recipient of that input? And if anybody'd be willing to do it, just let her know your thoughts. And by the way, don't feel like if you can't do it, that we don't love you, because I completely understand constraints on time. Okay, is there any other business that needs to be dealt with, Jen, that I forgot about?
No business, unless there's any new board business or public comment.
I would just like to make one comment about the new space that will come available and the great work that the team has put into that. As an organization that, owns space that other nonprofits use and makes major, renovations, the build out of this space as the main public facing aspect of career services in the region is something that I would hope every board member, after it opens, will make the time to take 10 minutes and go see it. Because nothing, they can show us the renderings on these Zooms, that'll be great. But 10 minutes, like when you're in the city, which most of you are, I'm the one that's out in the Mon Valley, but other than being in my closet in the South Hills. But the fact is, take 10 minutes, and I hope everybody will go see the space.
Thanks. Rob, I did want to make another comment on Brian Craig. You should reduce his compensation. He ate so many meals at my house when he was in high school that he still owes me a great deal of money. We need to open up for public comments. Are there any public comments?
Dave?
Yes.
There's an issue that's come up that Rob's been doing great work on. It has to do with the Careerlink, and it has to do with the unemployment system. I mean, we keep talking about a shortage of workers, but at the same time, we've got hundreds of thousands of people still trying to get claims resolved. And one of the issues that's come up locally has been this issue of the state, when they went to a web-based system, ended up having a lot of fraud, a lot of hacks and that kind of stuff. So they instituted this ID.me, which requires people to get an ID verification before they can even file for claims. And that system sucks, to put it pretty bluntly. And people are having tremendous problems with it. So there's been an attempt to go up and down the chain and get some human assistance in the career links, because that's where people come when they're looking for it. And Rob's pointed out, they come in angry, and if you can't do a damn thing for them, they go out even angrier. And so it's not and the problem is the career links have sort of been divorced from the UC system. And so Barney Auersler, who works with the Mon Valley Unemployed, has been able to get some of the other career links to do some things that are helpful. And sort of circumvent this app. Rob's been working with them on seeing whether we could do that more locally. But I do think some attention has to be put to the relationship between the career links and the unemployment system. Originally they were the unemployment office, and now it's apparently a divorced system. And I think, we should weigh in that if people are coming in there for services, the state owes us some consideration and some way of helping the career links deal with folks that are having trouble with the systems that they've put in place.
I know we're 3 minutes over time, but Rob, is there someone who would we have to convince that that's the case?
Well, so I did talk with Barney yesterday. So we had a really good discussion, and they had really good questions. So there was some overall unemployment compensation things that they wanted to know that I could actually help them with, just because of the work I did in Wisconsin, overseeing that system. Where we walked away from the meeting is I went through a set of responsibilities that the state allows us to do in Careerlink. And I walked through those and told them that I would make sure that those things are getting done. So that's number one. Number two is that the state did provide us with a number, a person, a regional director for them to talk to that they haven't talked to yet. So I provided them, I think his name was Jim, with Jim's number, and they're definitely, they were thankful for that, and they're going to reach out to Jim, and probably circle back and tell us what they learned from that meeting, because he is the contact for the state that would, initiate those type of requests or hear them out, basically. So we gave them that information. So what I told Barney is that we'd meet next week again. I get that information to understand clearly what we are doing in the career links, and not only understand clearly, but make sure that those things are getting done. And I'm sure he'll talk to Jim, hopefully during that time, or reach out, and we'll kind of trade notes after that. But definitely it's these systems are new, and they're going to be an issue, and there was no system in the country that could handle the volume that these systems were, basically these legacy systems were built to handle. And then with massive fraud, which is the reason that we have an ID.me system, it's an identification system to prove that you are you. So every state has had to implement that at some point. This state uses ID.me. We use LexisNexis in Wisconsin. Every state has some type of identification verification system that they had to put in, and it does extend the time to make a UC claim, but it does help ensure that you are you, and you're not a fraudulent claimer. But most of the fraudulent claims came from outside the country, these big hackers hitting the system in major ways and getting tens of millions of dollars out of these systems. So definitely understand what the state is doing around security, and definitely understand on the user end how it makes things more frustrating. And I think that the key point is that when you implement a system or a different component to a system, that you have the back-end capacity for, when people lose their passwords, things like that, that they can turn that around fairly fast. And that's what the time to do that is where usually people get very frustrated in the capacity of systems to do that.
Okay, that's
Hey, Rob, a real quick question. Dave, I know we're over time, but can I just ask a real quick question? Is the information that's already in Careerlink substantial overlap with that which the ID system is requiring of people? And if so, can we facilitate this process by just having them either count what we already have in the system or doing an export of what we have to their ID system? Is there some way that we can just help unclog the process for the people we're serving by the information they've already given to us?
We do help in the identification verification process. We're able to do some things there, but not everyone that's in the UC system is in our Careerlink system, and I think that's where the issue.
But those who are, is it the same information?
That I'm not 100% sure of either.
Well, maybe if we at least match those up, at least we could process for them.
Yeah.
It isn't always the same information, and oftentimes what ends up happening is that someone files for UC and then comes into the Careerlink system, because we are the re-employment side of the house. So they're hitting ID.me before they're coming to us.
Yeah. Well, we can't solve it now, but you can have our attention if you want it, Rob.
Yeah, but this is a great illustration of, indeed, this is a state issue.
Yeah.
That we could be talking to the Department of Labor and Industry under this governor about getting a change. This is exactly the policy issue that at the root of it, it's a policy issue. If we get the change in the regulatory side, which is in L&I, we could possibly see the change at the local level. These are the kind of things that, you know, that all tie together about, otherwise, this conversation's happened for 20 years, but those two sides of the house can't talk in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We can't get the data is what the previous conversations have been.
Yeah.
Some of you have lived through them, so you understand.
Well, Kiara just volunteered to help. I saw her in the chat, so she's going to solve this for us by next meeting. Let's make sure we at least talk about this in between, Rob, and be prepared to whatever we need to do for the next meeting. All right, I'm sorry. I hate to go over time, but
I know what you want, Dave. I make the motion, we adjourn.
No, I have to open up for public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Is there any? Hearing none now, you can make the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Please, everybody, have a great holiday. Know how much we appreciate your time and your brain power and your influence. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Great
guys.
meeting. Great meeting. Happy holidays.
Thanks.